Welcome everyone to another episode of the Shaman's Way podcast. As always, this episode comes from the teachings of our amazing friend and shaman in residence, Cricket. We hope you're enjoying these podcasts as much as we enjoy making them, and I'd like to take just a moment to ask you if you would please leave us a rating and a comment in iTunes or whichever podcast player you're listening to us from. Giving us a rating and sharing this podcast with others is the biggest way you can tell us that you like our show. Now, without further ado, on with the episode.
We live in a time, as you all are acutely aware, of the awakening of a warrior, the awakening of a much darker spirit. I know that I have talked about my experience shamanically right after September the 11th, 2001. The experience I had in the journey after the blowing up of the trade centers and the death of the many people in the Pentagon and the plane that went down, I found myself in journey in Iraq and in the Persian countries as well. What I found when I journeyed to find out about the effects or what the effects of war would be, I saw fissures and large cracks in the soil and the surface of the soil and the surface of the ground of the Middle East. And I saw this anger, this rage awaken within the soil. And that what the war would do is awaken the anger within the soil. It is not lost on me that 14 years later, we have truly awoken the rage within the soil. We have the uprising, the strengthening of ISIL. We still have the Taliban taking over even more and more space within Afghanistan. We have a complete destruction of the infrastructure in Syria, the infrastructure in Iraq, in the other countries that are currently at war. It was challenging to bring forward the idea of the warrior as a ceremony because I really was cognizant and am very cognizant of the fragile state of peace that we enjoy in Canada and similarly in many other countries in the world. I believe that the embracing of the warrior is a very important component to shamanic work. My relationship to the warrior and to my own warrior may be different than yours is. I know it is different than the warriors who are in police, the warriors who are in the army, in the navy, in the air force, the warriors who are the fire people, the warriors who are standing against pipelines and undrinkable water, and we can name pipelines and undrinkable water, and we can name so many other realities that awaken the warrior. The warrior has been a very important aspect of any tribe, any culture. You can go to any myth, to any story, whether it's modern or more ancient than written word, and we find within there the adoration, the adulation, the relationship to the positive warrior, the warrior who will go through all odds in order to preserve the name of the king, to preserve the name of honor, or to preserve the energy of honor. There are relatable aspects of the warrior. I think one of the aspects that I really wanted to bring to the forefront was that for many of us, there is not a relationship to the warrior in some way or other. I wanted to bring about a safe place and a safe space, a ceremony to awaken that warrior. We have many legacies of the warrior in all of its extremes, from the rogue warrior to the hero, the warrior dying for, as I said, dying for honor, dying for a king, dying for a queen. Each of us can associate in some form or other to the very word, but not many of us are with wearing the mantle of the warrior. I believe that the warrior has been given perhaps a really negative view in our consciousness, in our eyes. And the shadow of the warrior, the murderer, the shadow of the warrior, the terrorist, the shadow of the warrior, the militant, the zealot, the so on and so forth. We have many shadows of the warrior. The shamanic journey of the warrior, from my perspective, especially in my early years on the south of the medicine wheel, was filled with battles and weapons. But it was also brought in the insight, compassion, ruthlessness, Ginsei Nai, which means spiritual warfare has existed for as long as humans have existed, the same as physical or human warfare has gone on and existed as long as spiritual warfare. I have not heard many people in the circles I have attended over the years discuss throwing this disease or sorrow or hardship at so-and-so. So what I'm saying is that I haven't attended circles where I've heard people openly say that they're going to throw a curse at somebody or throw a sorrow at somebody, or I throw cancer at this person. Oh, may this person's truck break down the road home. I haven't heard that very much. However, in my studies of anthropology and also in archaeology, it is very common in our cultures, that our medicine people, our shaman people, our shamankas, all of the various hundreds of words we use to describe the mystical, magical, healing people within our cultures. This is discussed on a daily basis. I, not very long ago, was watching a documentary on BBC with respect to some of the people in Papua New Guinea, in the forests of Papua New Guinea. And it was recorded in modern day. The healers, the shamans, is what the people were called in the English language, but I don't know what they would call themselves in their language or within their culture, what that word would be. Anyhow, it was really common. Did you feel so-and-so's arrow come at you last night? Oh, yes, because so-and-so's baby is sick. Oh, we must find a healer for this. So this is really still a common part of the lexicon. The common part of the lexicon of throwing things or the ability to affect the health of others. This is spiritual warfare. This is spiritual reality for many cultures. So, as this is a daily topic, it challenges. The perspective on warrior can be challenging because we only see through the eyes which were gifted to us, the eyes of the privilege of peace. Perception, active awareness, alert, awake. Awakening the warrior is a ceremony because the warrior is sacred. All of those things aside, the warrior is a very sacred member of community. No tribe, no community, spiritual world could survive without their protectors. Your warrior, your personal warrior, whoever is listening, each individual ear I'm speaking to, your warrior may not be yelling in the streets for clean air. Your warrior may be doing daily tasks that benefit your whole family, or benefit your medical practice, or benefit your squad, or just benefit. Again, perspective, perception. So I want you to take a deep breath in and just relax your body for just a moment. And I want you to think of the word warrior. Now breathe that word warrior into your body. Where does that word sit? Does it sit in your belly, your shoulders, your neck, your hands? Breathe into that again. And what association, what emotion is associated with that breath, with that word warrior? And again, breathe into that. Where does the warrior sit? What emotion is sitting with the warrior? Don't do anything about it. Just breathe. Close your eyes and focus. Take a deep, long breath. Where is the warrior? What color is your warrior? What color is your warrior? Are you friends with the word? Are you making friends with the energy? Take a breath and stay quiet for 1 minute. And gently breathe in. And breathe out. And let me tell you a short story about myself. I entered into the medicine wheel on the east. I was a young woman. I had 2 small children at that point in time. And I needed gentleness. So the very first power animal that became my friend was a white deer that shape-shifted oddly. So sometimes it looked like a goat, sometimes it looked like something I could never really quite identify in this world, but it was always white. And I learned much about gentleness and compassion and intuition, but that very brief journey in the east did not last very long at all. However, the white deer accompanied me on my journey south into the medicine. White deer accompanied me on my journey south into the medicine wheel. The south of the medicine wheel, my journeys were very warlike. They had many fights within them. I learned quite a lot in regards to spiritual and physical cleanliness, how to clean my body, how to protect myself in the spirit world. I am very aware that my experience is not a common experience. I am very aware that not many people that I have crossed paths with in my years of doing this work are called to the path of the warrior. The majority of journeys that I have had the very privilege of hearing have been journeys, peaceful, maybe allowed for some self-questioning, often self-affirming, but truly with lessons. That was not my luck. My luck was just being in the South. As I grew as a human being in the life I was living, the warrior chose me. I did not actively seek to be a warrior. Through my training by the spirits, and certainly my own losses and all my own failures, I nurtured a relationship with power. And that was coupled with an understanding of the weight of power. So unpack that word. What was power? How can one be power-filled while standing in compassion and action? So again, I want you to take your eyes closed and a really deep breath in. Truly feel the word power in your body, and where does the word power rest? And take a breath in. And out. What emotion is associated when you breathe into the word power? And really breathe into that word. Don't do anything about it. Just breathe. Close your eyes and focus. Take a long breath. Take a long breath. Where is power? What color is power? Are you friends with the word? Are you making friends with the energy? Keep a nice, even rhythm breath and stay quiet for 1 minute, feeling your relationship with power, feeling the relationship to self. Our power and warrior in close proximity to one another. Our power and warrior friends at odds. Pack the word power emotionally. Was there initially a sense of anxiety, or was there a sense of acceptance, perhaps exhilaration in feeling the word power? Where does it resonate? Warrior and power. And take a breath in. Don't forget to breathe. And come back. Heavy ancestral patterns, a good component of why Spirit chose for me to truly enter the medicine wheel in earnest in the South, the place of the warrior. Because of my very heavy ancestral pattern. One of my ancestral patterns was abandonment. What happens is we seek to find an aspect of ourself who voices our self-doubt, our fear, and wishes sabotage upon us. In doing the awakening of the warrior, it's truly important to understand what trips you up. And are you a reactionary warrior, or are you trying to find conciliation as a warrior? Or are you trying to find conciliation as a warrior? Are you How triggered are you, and how controlled are you by your ancestral pattern? My pattern was abandonment. We seek to find an aspect of ourself, like I said, who voices that self-doubt, who voices fear, what part of us wishes us to sabotage. Our throat and our 6 chakras help us to understand that feeling of protection, that second chakra, that root chakra, that lower part of the body that is very invested in survival, very invested in family, relating, safety. When we move the warrior up through our understanding and our spiritual understanding, we allow our intuition to expand, and we connect ourselves to that whole. So the alchemy of spiritual relation into creation. So we pull those unconscious aspects and we allow them to become conscious. We create a conscious, intellectual, spiritual relationship with those ancestral wounds, and we step forward to create something different. How? It's a very good question. I use the medicine wheel as my teacher. However, don't be fooled. Entering into South, reintroduce yourself to warrior does not guarantee an instant fix. Rather, as the wheel continually turns, we're reminded it is but one rotation after another. And we perpetually spiral deeper into ourselves. And as we spiral deeper, we develop tools effective for ridding ourselves of our ancestral pattern, or weaving that ancestral pattern into the tapestry of our soul, so that ancestral pattern becomes a part of the whole instead of the whole. I have the pattern of abandonment, but instead of being a solid place within my body that it resides, through years I've broken that root of that and that pattern of abandonment, and I have spiritually spread it through the rest of my body so that I don't give as much juice or as much nourishment or as much fulfillment for that ancestral pattern. I take away its power. And in doing that, I take away my self-doubt. Abandonment is, for me, the self-doubt of, am I good enough? I'm going to be unlovable at some point. I'm going to, so, etc., etc., etc. And then in steps that wonderful teacher sabotage. The medicine wheel is a spiral, and it constantly moves in towards the center and it comes right back out again. As we work in ceremony, we move with the wheel between death of old patterns on the west, back to the south, the place of battle, east into that light of illumination and insight, and north we seek wisdom from the mystery and the ancestors. And when we cross the center of the medicine wheel, we remind ourselves we're stepping into the mystery, the spot between the blue road and the black road, the road of the human experience and the road of the spiritual experience, that ever-present crossing point, even that is shown on the Christian cross. Even that represents human experience and creation at the very center of the spiritual reality and the physical reality. On the wheel, again, I reiterate, it is in the south of the wheel. The south holds. On the wheel, again, I reiterate, it is in the south of the wheel. The South holds some aspects of ego, and ego can be a trigger for ancestral patterns of self-doubt, fear, and the saboteur. But remember, bad energy begets bad energy. And if you nurture the negative, if you nurture that wound, you soon find yourself moving into the South again, moving into that place of battle. So with the warrior's eyes, I began to see my true darkness, however you define that for yourself. And in witnessing the true darkness, I found varying shades of darkness. I found that distinguishing aspect of moral and immoral, and what is it that I have to ask myself to distinguish between good and evil? We evolve and attempt to enhance our sense of judgment, or rather our ability to perceive. Again, we come back to perception and perception. If we are walking on that path of warrior, how do we distinguish between good and evil? How do we know in our shamanic journeys, in our day-to-day lives, what we're going to fight for? And really, what are the distinguishing aspects? What is moral to you? What is immoral to you? And what is amoral to you? They are very different words, and they connotate very different aspects of the human and the not-so-human experience. It's that evolution that we really do attempt to enhance our sense of judgment, or that ability to perceive, discernment. I love the word discernment. To discern my enemies, to discern my foes, to discern my healers. Perceptions, perceptions, perceptions. Are you standing in the place of judgment, or are you standing in the place of discernment? When we are in our skin of healers, or shamans, or druids, or witches, or whatever path you follow, we listen to the call from spirit, from source, to judge those we are fighting. My warrior eyes attempt to discern the bad guys. So for me, a bad guy could be those who exploit others for their own gain, either in the mundane world or in the sacred world. Those who cause harm, either physical or spiritual, for pleasure or personal gain. Those people, those entities, spirits, demons, and other beings who attack, harass, harm, or threaten people or other beings. The warrior eye attempts to discern these things. And these are just very few things. There are many other aspects of the human experience that we perceive, we work with, and we determine. The deeper my relationship with warrior became, so they were on that medicine wheel, we're spiraling into the center. In retrospect, transition between living in chaos and distortion to living more in harmony. How can that be, living in the warrior, that I can change or transit between chaos and distortion? Warrior has taught me patience and the value of observation. Standing in the place of ego, fighting a battle can be much easier than standing in the place of compassion. And perceive your surroundings. Watch my enemy, deciding on a resolution as opposed to a reaction. It's not an easy task, don't get me wrong. For sure, sometimes not even quickly accomplished. We wish to fight a battle. We wish, when we see an inaccuracy or we see an inadequacy or an inequality step forward, we wish to bring that battle, that warrior up to fight. Not all of us, but to bring some sort of balance or harmony back into the world. So, am I standing in the place of ego and fighting a battle, which is, again, easier? Or how can I stand in a place of compassion? So instead of instantly relegating my energy to the warrior, standing back and perceiving my surroundings. One of the joys and the benefits of working with your spirits, with your surroundings, with your alert awareness, with your perceptions, is that you perceive your surroundings on many different levels. So how do you perceive that? That changes also the view of the battle or the view of that upcoming that changes also the view of the battle or the view of that upcoming entanglement. That's not easy, like I said. And it does take time to not be the warrior and to be the smart warrior who knows when to battle and who knows when to let, the fires just burn themselves out. If you are beginning on the south of the medicine wheel, be content with the beginning in the south and simply acknowledge that you may have to return here often to face the battle of your own ego, your own prejudices, angers, and other emotions which require attention. You will automatically find yourself here when you find yourself perceived with negative energy or surrounded by negative energy. I have met different spirits over the time. I will tell you a little bit about that, but not a lot. This we can certainly save for another day. However, what I do want to bring to your attention is that you are never alone completely on the medicine wheel. You're never alone completely in the spirit world. At first glance, we note the warrior is a powerhouse of energy, the source of which is a transpersonal commitment. We have the warrior in our modern psychology or our modern work to stand as an archetype, the role of the warrior. So in order to understand that archetype, that being that has persisted throughout human psyche, prevalence of the warrior in our myths, in our language, in our tribes, and in our spiritual reality. And I turn to understanding comparative mythology, comparative traditions with respect to the honoring of the warrior, the dissolution of the warrior. One of the aspects that is quite prevalent is the loyalty. A warrior is fiercely loyal to the warrior code. Honor. We talked earlier about what would be willing to die for. So the king, or shamanically, to yourself or to your journey intention. So the warrior and the king in and of itself, or the queen, the king and the queen, the quest, that from a mythological, the king and the queen, the quest, that from a mythological perspective, that represents the warrior's purpose. So in shamanic journeys, what's the warrior's purpose? In some of my journeys, the warrior is required to retrieve the soul pieces. Some of my journeys, the warrior is required in psychopomp work because negatives or the angry ghosts or the hungry ghosts are intent on capturing the new ghosts and the new dead souls and taking them to their place, so the land of the dead or the cave of lost children. And in psychopomp experiences after disasters, whether it be an earthquake, a tsunami, a nuclear meltdown, the warrior then is responsible for gathering as many souls as possible to keep them safe and to enable the spirits that are associated with them and their culture to gather them up and take them to wherever is promised to them. For some, it's for heaven. For others, it is the summer land. For others, it is that place beyond or west. That person has gone west, over crossing the river. There are many ways to do this. The domain of the warrior is a battlefield, be it a battlefield of war, of spirituality, or of moral ethics. The warrior's purpose is often to destroy. But the mature warrior, that which has chosen to learn, am I standing in the place of ego? Am I standing in the place of knowing? The older the warrior is a master tactician, knowing at times what are the limitations and some of the creative ways around limitations. So a young warrior is not a thinker, but a young warrior is a doer. The older warrior, the more seasoned warrior, thinks, perceives, seeks resolution, not always focused on reaction. However, as we all know, overthinking can also be an enemy because it inhibits the ability to act swiftly and with force. So I trained myself to stand back in safety and perceive dangers and facing actions. So I encourage all of you to trust your judgment and your ability to discern what is happening around you. It is always around you. It is always an interesting journey to discover the ways of the warrior. And it is always an interesting reality to be at peace with your warrior if you can. Until next time, I wish you many amazing journeys and delving into the world of spirit.
Thank you again for joining us here on the Shaman's Way podcast. If you have any questions, would like to make a request for a future episode, or if you're looking for other shamanic resources, including free drumming tracks, please visit us at shamansway.net. Until the next episode, be well, everyone.